Well, all right, though. Let's get back into Pierce Morgan. Send that to your friend and say nothing.
Said when you resigned appears to have been pretty much confirmed by that New York Times report, which is extremely detailed and paints a picture of Netanyahu in the White House, in the Situation Room, with the head of Mossad appearing on a screen next to him, in which he laid out a 4-point plan for why this would work: decapitating the regime, the people would rise up, they would be too powerless to shut the Strait of Hormuz, and so on, most of which has not happened. What do you feel about the fact there's now this ceasefire, albeit it seems quite a perilous one? Is it a recognition, do you think, by President Trump that he's got to get out of this?
Well, I think it's a good thing that President Trump took the opportunity to enact a ceasefire and to get both sides to the negotiating table. I think what's key, though, is that President Trump has to realize in order to accomplish our strategic goal, which is ending this conflict, reopening the Straits of Hormuz, and maintaining the alliances that we have in the Gulf, he has got to restrain the Israelis. The Israelis have a different strategic goal than we do. They want to take down the entire regime. They don't care how long it takes. They don't care how much we have to commit in terms of blood and treasure. So the Israelis and us have parted ways in terms of strategic objectives. We have to be honest with ourselves. It sounds like, considering the fact that someone shared the origins of this war with the New York Times, that is recognized now by this administration. So the first thing that President Trump has to do in order to make sure this lasts is actually restrain the Israelis, take away key components of the military aid that we give them so that they lack the capability to go on the offense and to spoil this ceasefire.
Will Chamberlain, your response to that?
I mean, I think that's a completely incorrect.
Now, before we get into this guy's argument, let me go ahead and actually play what he was talking about, because CNN pretty much came out with the story today that New York Times dropped pretty much an article exposing the fact that, the Trump administration is mad that Bibi kind of lied to us, saying that this was going to be easy. And, well, I mean, as you see, that was a big lie, terrible lie. But let me see if here I could go ahead and find it. If not, all right, let me play this back.
Coherent idea, not merely wrong, but just incoherent. First off, it presupposes we have the ability to take away their offensive capabilities. Newsflash, they already have them. We can't just seize them. Are we going to invade Israel and take their planes? We can't. They have the F-35. They have these capabilities. Remember, they launched the 12-day war on their own. So, I mean,
no, but
even
America,
the debate
but on that
itself
point, on that point, the Americans could withdraw their funding.
I mean, yeah, we could do something, bro. Just saying, hey, look, man, it's Israel. You got to let them do what they want to do. I'm like, bro, they're getting in the way of peace. I mean, they're getting in the way of this ceasefire. Like, no, we can't just let them do that. I mean, shoot, I'm mad we even let them drag us into this war, but we're not just going to let them run reckless. And I mean, real with you, completely lay waste to southern Lebanon. I mean, we really shouldn't let them do that. But all right, though, let's go ahead and get over to this little CNN clip real quick.
You and your co-author, Jonathan Swan, have an excerpt from your new book, Regime Change Inside the Imperial Presidency of Donald Trump, in the New York Times today. It's fascinating. You describe in it a Situation Room meeting where Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu gave a detailed pitch for going to war with Iran. Do you think the public fully grasps just how influential Netanyahu was in President Trump's decision to attack Iran? What have you learned?
So our reporting, Anderson, for the book, and this is our first excerpt from it, the book comes out in June, but relates to how this particular lead-up period, and I think it's important to underscore, and again, we write about this today, Jonathan and I do, that the president and Bibi Netanyahu have actually been much more aligned in certain ways over a very long period of time than certainly a lot of the president's base of supporters want to see, and then some of his own advisors either recognize or want to admit. And if you look back at his first term, President Trump's term, the strike on General Soleimani was something that a lot of people opposed around him. He really didn't have any hesitation about doing it and just did it. There were some people who were thrilled that he did it. It had repercussions, right? I mean, Iran has been looking to go after him in one way or another ever since, and it has escalated tensions there. But it shouldn't really be a surprise if you look at the decade-long relationship. When Bibi Netanyahu came to this Situation Room meeting with the president and the president's senior advisors on February 11th, it's pretty extraordinary, Anderson, because it is clearly unusual for a foreign leader to be in this kind of an in-person meeting in the Situation Room. It certainly speaks to the magnitude of it. But Netanyahu was laying out a number of different ways in which they believed this could go, that a war could go. And it would involve taking out ballistic missile capacity. It would involve Iran not attacking its neighbors so aggressively. It would involve Iran not choking off, minimal likelihood of choking off the Strait of Hormuz. And then there was the possibility of regime change, that it could happen. He played a video of possible options for who could take over if there was, some change or disruption to the clerical leadership in Iran, although most of the Americans didn't really favor the people that he was talking about, or some of the people he was talking about. So he didn't suggest this all as, if this, then this is the absolute outcome. But certainly President Trump was impressed by what he heard. He didn't completely say yes right there, but he did say sounds good to me, or something to that effect, to the prime minister. And it was clear that that was a likely green light. It was clear to the president's advisors that he was impressed with what they saw. The next day, there was an overnight assessment that was done by U.S. intelligence officials, and there were aspects of what Netanyahu described that could be done, but the regime change scenarios were described by the CIA director as farcical and by the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, as bullshit. And so that is where it becomes a conflation of a lot of different points. Most notably was that J.D. Vance was the most adamant voice against doing this in the president's circle, and repeatedly said this in front of his colleagues to the president.
Fascinating. Maggie Hibbern, thanks very much.
I want to start with some of the reporting that they have on the ambivalence that was in the room. Mr. Rubio, of course, the Secretary of State and National Security Advisor, indicated to colleagues that he was much more ambivalent. Ms. Wiles, Susie Wiles, Chief of Staff, had concerns about what a new conflict overseas could entail, but she did not tend to weigh in hard on military matters in large meetings. General Kane, the Joint Chiefs Chair, was not a political loyalist, and he had serious concerns about a war with Iran, but he was very cautious in the way he presented his views to the president.
What's fascinating about all of that reporting is group that together with also how some of how the IC community, how Ratliff and also Rubio pushed back on the briefing that these top officials got from the Israelis as well. You did have officials saying, in this story, Marco Rubio basically dismissing, this report. Others saying that the Israelis have attempts to exaggerate in this briefing. Go ahead.
Let me just put sort of a little meat on that bone real quick. So what you're talking about also in this report is Prime Minister Netanyahu went into the White House on February 11th and gave some very bold, optimistic assessments of what could happen if the U.S. and Israel went to war there.
In the Situation Room.
Into the Situation Room. Thank you.
Yes,
right.
yeah.
So you have the Israeli Prime Minister in the Situation Room with a small group of people, including the fact that it could bring an end to the Islamic regime. And what you were saying, this according to the reporting, when Mr. Trump joined the meeting of the U.S. intelligence officials.
Now, you see why this is so damning? So, and yeah, I was listening in the background, but this is so damning because basically you're saying that you ignored one of your prime generals. Even he had reservations about this. I mean, you pretty much got sold the dream that you can get easy regime change, and it turned out to be wrong. And now y'all upset. I mean, shout out to J.D. Vance for sticking out there and being like, nah, we shouldn't do this. But I'm be real with you. You should have been a little bit more vociferous about that. I mean, shoot, you should have went on Fox News, CNN, ABC News, don't matter, saying, look, we don't need to get into this war. Maybe Donald Trump would have pulled back if he's seen enough opposition out of his own side, not just Joe Kent.
After that Netanyahu briefing, Mr. Ratcliffe briefed him on the assessment. The CIA director used one word to describe the Israeli prime minister's regime change scenarios: farcical. At that point, Mr. Rubio cut in other words, it's bullshit.
I think that is really important to highlight, right? Especially if we're going to talk about the ambivalence that people had to express a dissenting view, to the president, because you did have doubts there. but those doubts weren't forcefully argued to the president, right? And we've talked often, going back to last year, about how loyalty is such a measure of success in this administration. And I've often had a reporting target of how does that translate in these meetings where you would expect a back and forth and a counter argument to be presented, and then another argument to be presented? Or is it that some of the most powerful, influential people in government are really just focused on, at times, telling the president what he does rather than what he does not want to hear, right? And this reporting was so important because on something as pivotal as whether or not to go to war, it really seemed like the only person who presented that counter argument was the vice president, was J.D. Vance.
And Shelby, let me read you part of that reporting. In front of his colleagues, Mr. Vance warned Mr. Trump that a war against Iran could cause regional chaos and untold numbers of casualties. It could also break apart Mr. Trump's political coalition and would be seen as a betrayal by many voters who had bought into the promise of new wars.
Yeah, the vice president seems to have been the most forceful one in the room and sort of laying out more clearly what everybody else was trying to quietly express to the president. And so, I do think that there was clearly some effort to say, hey, hold on, what about this? What about this? But I think that at the end of the day, there's a few aspects. The people around Trump this time around are very careful. So even when they express their opinions, I think sometimes it's curbed, and they aren't as forceful as, say, the vice president. But I also think that the president had already made up his mind. And I think that there was an acknowledgement among the room and among this group of advisors in particular that, okay, well, we'll say there are some risks to this, but at the end of the day, as that reporting notes, the team around Donald Trump, at the end of the day, whenever he does something, they'll voice their opinion, they'll say something, but if he wants to do it, they go ahead with it.
Oh, God, you got any questions, comments, jokes, or disagreements? I'll be happy to read out loud and engage with it. Just $2 and up on the super chat. Appreciate the support, or you can support on Rumble as well with $1. Shout out to Rumble.
And this is a clear example, even something as huge as going to war with Iran.
Yeah, which, I mean, that is actually in keeping with the way most administrations are. I mean, he's the president, he was elected, they weren't, and so forth. I do think the fact that the U.S. intelligence agencies push back about the notion of any idea of regime change from this maybe speaks to why the U.S. goal at the beginning and still now wasn't, they were saying regime change would be nice, but it's not part of our goal.
So there's the intel side of the briefing that Israel presented, and as you're saying, that many in the U.S. were skeptical of from the U.S. intel community. But I think it also exposes this reporting, the political divide that exists, because so much criticism on the right and the left, and I don't mean just what J.D. Vance said about you promised no new wars, but it's about Israel leading the U.S. into this. That is the core of the critique on the right and the left of Trump's foreign policy in this moment in time. And I think that this...
you can't say it's America first when Israel led us into it. I mean, you're basically saying this is an Israel first war.
Having Netanyahu in the Situation Room, the tightness around this, to me, exposes the heart of that concern.
And real quick, one of the right wing's most ardent opponents of the state of Israel is Tucker Carlson. And in this reporting, it says that Tucker went to speak to the president about this. Mr. Trump, who had known Mr. Carlson for years, tried to reassure him, they talked on the phone. I know you're worried about it, but it's going to be okay, the president said. Mr. Carlson asked how he knew, because it always is. And I think that's another dynamic here that we can't push aside, which is that the president feels so emboldened, or at least felt so emboldened by, in this first term, getting out Soleimani, by the operation in Venezuela, both of which were so different from what he embarked on with Iran. But that was a part of his thinking as he went into this Operation 6.
All right, though, let's have a little bit of fun here before we get back to the Piers Morgan reaction between Joe Ken and that other guy. Let's get into this whole ghost murmur, CIA secret weapon explained, because this is how we pretty much found our guy that, crash landed in Iran. Yo, check this out. This is pretty badass. Oh, make sure to double tap that screen and like the video, guys. I'm not really sure how much likes we got, but I know it's less than 800. So go ahead and double tap that screen and like the video, because that's how much we got of y'all in here. Appreciate the support.
So, why exactly is this considered the CIA's most powerful surveillance weapon to date? Well, it has the ability to track and lock on the single heartbeat of one person, friend, or foe from 40 miles away. On April 2026, this concept became a reality. With this classified tech, U.S. forces didn't even need a radio signal. They could locate a single man hidden in a cave from 40 miles out just by zeroing in on his heartbeat. Our 3D animators created a simplified model of this overclocked system to show how it works. It uses engineered synthetic diamonds to create a long-range quantum sensor. Strapped to a helicopter, it can detect the tiny electromagnetic pulse of a beating heart from miles away. So why use this specific technology to find the missing weapons system officer instead of the usual tech? Well, it is because infrared cameras and satellites are completely useless when your target is buried deep inside a mountain. In short, the CIA can now track your actual heartbeat. If you're in friend, this tech could be the lifeline that brings you home. But if you're the enemy, not even the caves or the desert can hide you anymore. How the US deployed the CIA's secret weapon. In early April 2026, the CIA pulled the curtain back on a terrifyingly advanced piece of technology. The mission: to rescue a downed F-15 East Strike Eagle weapons systems officer, known to the public only as Dude 44 Bravo. To find him, the U.S. military mounted highly classified heartbeat scanning technology onto Black Hawk helicopters and HC-130J Combat Kings to sweep the battlefield. Developed by Lockheed Martin's legendary Skunk Works, the system is officially based on quantum magnetometry. But in the field, it goes by a much cooler name, Ghost Murmur. This secret weapon allowed U.S. forces to find a man hiding in a cave from up to 40 miles away, simply by listening to his heartbeat. The implications are staggering. Imagine you're an enemy combatant or a fugitive hiding deep in the desert. With one sweep, this technology can pinpoint your exact location, even through solid rock.
Dang.
So how exactly does it work? To understand Ghost Murmur, you have to look at the physics of the human body. Every single time your heart beats, your muscles depolarize, generating a faint electromagnetic field. Normally, a doctor has to place sensors directly onto your bare chest just to read it. Ghost Murmur takes that concept and scales it up to a battlefield level using long-range quantum magnetometry. The core of the system relies on microscopic, engineered defects inside synthetic diamonds known as metrogen vacancy centers. At the quantum level, these defects are hypersensitive to even the smallest fluctuations in magnetic fields. When mounted on a helicopter, these quantum sensors cast a massive, invisible net over the landscape, registering the microscopic electromagnetic footprint of a human heart from miles away. Wow. But there is a catch. A quantum sensor is almost too good. It absorbs everything. A modern battlefield is flooded with electromagnetic noise. The Earth's natural magnetic fields, solar radiation, enemy radar, and radio chatter. If you look at the raw data, it's just pure static. To actually find the pilot, Ghost Murmur relies on heavy-duty artificial intelligence processing engine. This AI is trained to do exactly one thing: recognize the precise clinical rhythm of a human heart, the murmur. It acts as an aggressive filter, discarding mountains of background interference to isolate that single repeating signal. As one source familiar with the program put it, it's like trying to hear a single whisper in a packed stadium, except the stadium is 1,000 square miles of desert. When Dude 44 Bravo went down, he spent roughly 36 hours in hiding. You might be wondering, why not just use satellites to capture his heat signature? The answer is simple. If he's hiding deep inside a cave system, traditional cameras and thermal trackers cannot penetrate those hardened structures. So this is the perfect time to use the Ghost Murmurs in the southern Iranian desert, provided the perfect testing ground for this new tech. It's a low-clutter environment with almost zero electromagnetic interference and very few competing human biological signatures. Ghost Murmur is also entirely passive.
You know what? I could low-key see the Chinese and Russians taking notes right now. Like, wait, y'all got that? Like, yeah, apparently we do.
It doesn't broadcast a signal. It simply reads the environment. The downed airman didn't have to break cover or risk radioing for help. As long as his heart was beating, he was a beacon on a CIA monitor. When the sun set and the desert temperature plummeted, search and rescue teams paired this quantum heartbeat detection with traditional thermal imaging. They locked onto his exact position, cross-referenced the data, and sent in the recovery team. The name of his program is deliberate. Murmur for the clinical rhythm of the heart. Ghost for locating an asset that had effectively disappeared. During the rescue, a lot of people were asking, why would the US willingly destroy a $200 million plane? Well, the destruction of that C-130 in the Iranian desert is a stark reminder of just how unforgiving modern special operations can be. The Ghost Murmur hardware and the highly classified CIA tech packed inside these aircraft are so advanced and so vital to national security that the planes themselves become completely expendable. To the US military, deliberately burning hundreds of millions of dollars worth of equipment isn't a failure. It's a necessary sacrifice to keep American secrets in the dark, deny the enemy a massive technological windfall, and most importantly, bring American personnel home alive. Now you might be asking, why did the weapons system officer not just use a radio or a coded signal to broadcast his location? The reality is that Iranian signals intelligence is much more sophisticated than most people realize. They have dedicated units specifically designed to hunt and track continuous broadcasts. When their F-15 was shot down by a surface-to-air missile, both crew members managed to eject, but the weapons system officer was injured in the process. His immediate objective? Get to higher ground. Despite his injuries, he hiked over 2 miles and scaled a 7,000-foot ridge line. While dodging capture, he managed to trigger his emergency beacon, pinning U.S. forces so they could begin tracking his location. But he couldn't just stay on the radio. His communication had to be sporadic if he transmitted too often. The IRGC's signals intelligence teams who were actively hunting his frequency would pinpoint his exact coordinates. In a hostile evasion scenario, a standard rescue beacon or a coded message isn't a lifeline. It's a homing beacon for the enemy. And that is exactly why the Ghost Murmur is the perfect tool for tracking a soldier behind enemy lines. To buy the downed officer time, the CIA launched a massive disinformation campaign inside Iran. They started leaking rumors that U.S. forces had already found the WSO and were attempting to smuggle him out on the ground. It worked perfectly. This phantom ground exfiltration successfully diverted Iranian military resources and attention completely away from the actual extraction site. If you're looking to upgrade your digital defense system, you need to check out this military-grade VPN, 30-day money-back guarantee. Despite the odds, U.S. Special Forces successfully in helicopters navigated the jagged landscape below radar level and reached their objective, establishing a defensive perimeter around the wounded WSO. But time was up. Just as they prepared to grab him and get out, the horizon started moving. IRGC ground forces, popular mobilization units, and local militias were rapidly converging on their exact location. What happened next was an absolute slugfest. A massive hours-long firefight erupted right in the middle of the day. Look at this ridge. They were surrounded, taking fire from all sides. U.S. operators laid down a withering wall of suppressive fire. The commandos locked down a 360-degree defensive perimeter, guns up, air cover overhead, designed to annihilate any IRGC element that stepped within range. But it was the loitering U.S. aircraft overhead that truly tipped the scales. To keep the extraction corridor from collapsing, American air power continuously hammered the advancing Iranian units. Assets like the A-10 Thunderbolt rained hellfire down on them. The sheer volume of close air support from the A-10s, Little Birds, and Black Hawks pounded the surrounding Iranian positions, taking a heavy toll and resulting in reported casualties across areas like Kuisiyah and Kakan. That air support bought the ground teams the one thing they needed most: seconds. But one of the most dangerous electronic warfare comes from the disc-shaped objects attached to this Black Hawk helicopter. While the Pentagon hasn't officially disclosed the specific hardware, military experts often call this a soft kill system. So how does it actually work? To understand the weapon, you first have to look at what it did. The most likely candidate for a weapon that creates that kind of internal pressure without external sound is a high-power microwave device. It relies on something called the Frey effect. The weapon, probably carried by a Chinook or a Black Hawk helicopter, fires a focused beam of pulse microwave energy, not sound waves.
You know, it's crazy. This is why a lot of people are saying, like, there's this speculation out there, or I think it might have been confirmed that there was a CIA mission running while this was going on. And the fact that, you know, this dude got shot down kind of like, you know, kind of screwed the whole mission. And apparently it was a mission to steal their uranium.
Passes right through the skull. These beams are absorbed by the water in the brain tissue and the fluid in the inner ear. This energy causes a minuscule rapid heating of the tissue, less than 1 degree Celsius.
Oh.
But that tiny sudden expansion generates a pressure wave inside the skull. The consequence? The target hears a sound, clicks, buzzing, or a roar that originates inside their own head, bypassing the eardrums entirely.
Ow.
If the frequency is tuned to the resonance of the inner ear, it violently disrupts the body's balance, causing immediate vertigo. At higher power levels, that rapid tissue expansion can rupture capillaries, leading to the reported nosebleeds and internal trauma. There is another possibility, a weaponized infrasonic pulse emitter. Instead of a continuous beam, this device would fire high-intensity slugs of low-frequency air pressure below 20 Hz. These waves travel through the body and match the resonant frequency of internal organs like the stomach or lungs. High-intensity infrasound can actually cause cavitation, the formation of bubbles in bodily fluids.
Done.
When those bubbles...
Hey, yo, man, F bullets, bro. We using sound waves nowadays. Huh, you can dodge a bullet. You may be able to get behind us. You may be able to cover from a bullet, but you know what you can't get away from? Those sound waves.
Collapse, they create tiny shock waves that damage tissue. The target feels an intense vibration in their gut, leading to severe nausea and effectively paralyzing them with pain and sickness.
Unfair.
Tactically, the reports suggest U.S. forces use this technology as the ultimate force multiplier. The result was that the hundreds of Venezuelan guards mentioned in the reports weren't fought in a traditional gun battle. They were incapacitated, sick, dizzy, and bleeding, long before U.S. troops made contact. This allowed a small team of approximately 20 operators to walk virtually unopposed through a much larger force. We make original videos from scratch and animated by humans, so please subscribe.
Interesting, I'll tell you that. But all right.